Hello, this is Yağmur, Zara, and Kamisha. Today we'll be discussing work motivation, theories of it, and how it's affected by one's own personality and environmental factors based on article The Theory of Purposeful Work Behavior. Employee motivation is a critical aspect at the workplace which leads to the performance of the department and even the company. But how do we motivate them? What are their motivational drivers to come to work every day? We will be starting with the trait theory. Trait theory is one of the major approaches to the study of human personality. Personality traits can be defined as habitual patterns of behavior, thoughts, and emotion that are manifest in a wide range of situations. An advantage of the trait theory is that it allows us to categorize observable behaviors. Researchers have found that examining the aggregate behaviors of individuals provides a strong correlation with traits. But there are some limitations to it, such as trait perspectives are often criticized for their predictive value. And another limitation is that they require personal observations or subjective self-reports to measure, because self-report measures require that an individual be introspective enough to understand their behavior. There is substantial empirical research showing that individual differences in personality traits play important roles in predicting and explaining employee motivation and behavior. According to the article The Theory of Purposeful Work Behavior, there are 4 types of motivation. First one is communion-striving motivation, which is a fundamental goal that evolved for survival purposes and represents an individual's motivation to obtain acceptance in personal relationships and get along with others. Getting along refers to the need for a communion, because people feel the need of belonging to a group. This need comes from feeling responsible to a group, which might also be referred as citizenship. This means supporting each other at work, helping one's teamwork, or avoiding unnecessary conflicts. In order to be in a communion, one should carry the characteristics of an agreeable individual, meaning being altruistic, sympathetic, and eager to help others. So when an individual's personality traits are harmonious with attributes of the job situation, it allows individuals to feel freely and fully draw on self-regulatory processes associated with allocation of attention and effort attained to his or her communion goals.
So I guess that kind of relates to one of the questions about whether or not motivation is prompted by the right kind of job or role or task. Yes, but at the same time, it also depends on what exactly one's higher order goals are, whether they're more communion striving or achievement striving or status striving. I feel in the case of achievement striving higher order goals, then because you're prompted by meeting tasks, and your engagement in your job will be more purposeful in order to satisfy your goals, then of course the motivation would be prompted by the job role. But then we also have to look at it on a deeper level, because for someone who is more, or who has more achievement-based oriented motivation, based on the theory of purposeful work behavior and the outlines there, such a person would be said to have a high level of conscientiousness and emotional stability. And so the job design correlates with that in the sense that they would need to have a high level of task identity, feedback from job, and also feedback from other people. In this case, we can say yes, it does. The job does prompt the motivation, but at the same time, depending on the drivers for wanting that particular goal, we can then say it does not exactly come from the job. So in the article, it identifies that attention and not necessarily explicit awareness guides behavior. So you don't have to be explicitly aware of your higher order goals, you just have to pay attention to them. And in such a case, if based on the theory, one was to say that someone is more achievement oriented in terms of motivation. A situation where a person is emotionally stable and conscientious, as outlined by the theory, but they also come from a highly demanding family or background. Their motivation, although they meet the personality traits that would then say that, okay, they're more motivated by achievement, the motivation could also come from communion striving, like Yamu mentioned before, because in this sense, it's more of a situation where this person is trying to achieve these goals and targets, not to fulfill some innate desire based on their personality, but rather as a way to gain acceptance from their family and to develop the personal family relationship. And that's why, as well, this model can't be said to apply to every situation exactly. You could also look at it from the aspect of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In such a situation, you would say that such person's motivations would belong to the level of love and belonging as well as esteem. At these levels, once those goals or needs have been attained, then motivation reduces. So the theory of purposeful work behavior implies that your motivation level remains the same. Whereas if you compare it to Maslow says that at certain levels, the more your needs are met, your motivation reduces until you get to the point of what's the top one? Self-actualization. In which turn, when you get there, your motivation actually increases. Which are two very opposing views on, the level of motivation.
So I agree with Zara that the theory of purposeful work, I feel that they think that motivation is fixed based on the fact that they think that individuals' emotional stability is going to be practically the same. Like if you're an extrovert, you're probably going to be power hungry and you're going to actually be motivated by status driven motivation. But I think that this article literally just puts people into a box that they will never escape. Like in life, different things happen that changes your personality, changes who you are, and that would in turn changes the way that you'll be motivated at work. And as it relates to Maslow, some people may go to work just because they need shelter, they need food in their house. Other people may go to work because they need self-actualization. This article, I believe, it just takes general personalities and just puts them into different categories in which they can be motivated. But that motivation can be like intertwined regardless of what you're classified as your personality, because at the end of the day, we are human beings and we're forever revolving. So these specific tasks, I feel it's just the surface and what you start with your employees, but you have to know that you have to be open to change because your employees are not going to be the same each and every day.
You mentioned something about change, and that was a really good point, because in terms of like being a manager in a managerial position, people's applying this theory of purposeful work behavior, like actually in the workplace, if you were going to, let's say, treat your employees a certain type of way based on the type of personality they have, or assign them certain tasks to do based on that personality, people's personalities can also change depending on jobs. But there's a study that shows the relationship between high stress levels and personality changes. So depending on like the job sector, and like if your employees are exposed to high stress situations, this model wouldn't be very appropriate to use, because you might be thinking, okay, this is what is motivating this one person, and so let me apply this practice to them. However, over the course of, it could be a week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 years maybe, their personality could change, and then it affects the outcomes of the business in terms of like productivity, because you're trying to motivate them in a way that doesn't actually work for them, and that's because you've already placed them into this box, like Kamisha said, that they no longer fit in.
So basically you're saying that personality really affects employees' motivation, but in a sense that not everyone is affected from like is the same from every situation, or for instance some work, so like some kind of work can put a lot of stress on some employees, but like some of them they just like they can handle it.
But also in the sense that because you're defining people by these boxes, it's like you're saying, for example, the thing about extroverts being more inclined to status based goals. Mm-hmm. It's because someone has particular traits does not necessarily mean they have a specific type of personality. So for instance, like for achievement, well, based on the study, the people who are said to strive for achievement-based goals are, one, have high level of conscientiousness, and they also are emotionally stable. Because someone has these two things, like I highlighted earlier, it doesn't necessarily mean that that is what is motivating them. They could be motivated by other factors. For instance, they could have these two traits but still want to feel a part of a community, and so they might be more communion striving in their goals.
Okay, so we all agree that personality is really important when choosing job, but so as mentioned already, so trait perspective has like a limitation, which is it categorizes people by observing their behavior, but the thing is you can't just categorize people by just observing their particular behaviors. You have to actually evaluate their personality individually, which is actually also really hard.
Almost impossible.
Yes, exactly. But actually, trait theory might work in some situations, but in order to do this in a big scale, I don't think it's gonna be effective.
And also talking about satisfaction, I think the main problem actually with using trait theory is the fact that one, the only person that can actually know what they are like or can assume they know what they're like is the person themselves, and you can't exactly explain one person's motivations based off of observation alone. Yeah. And in doing that, as a company or as a manager trying to satisfy your workers in terms of like the jobs that you're giving or the tasks that you're assigning, it'll be a bit difficult because you're doing that based off of your own assumptions about what you've seen. Mm-hmm. Whereas the person may or may not necessarily know more about themselves and what would actually make them satisfied within the job. And I feel like that can also affect like, you know, how affects how much of a sense of responsibility the worker has to the company or to the group that they're working on as well. And so it could affect job performance. It could also affect task performance, yeah.
It could cause them to quit.
Exactly. I feel to round it all up, I feel we've agreed that personality does affect the things people may strive for. However, it's not the only thing that would affect what they strive for, especially when personality is being categorized into only 5 boxes, as well as the fact that motivation can be prompted by the right kind of task, but it also depends on exactly what the motivation is or what the motivation outcome is.